Okay, so I'm picking back up where I left off. Key concepts in economics. The second one is this idea that rational decisions are made at the margins. And this one's a little bit complicated. To kind of undress this idea, the first thing we need to do is understand what this means, rational. And in economics, rational doesn't mean making necessarily smart choices. It means doing things that make you the most satisfied. Okay. So it's going to take us a little time to get to this entire idea, and we'll start out by giving you a couple of terms here. Utility is anything or maybe a better way to put this is utility is a measure of life satisfaction. A measure of life satisfaction. So if you're thinking about the things you care about, these things don't always necessarily make you happy. So in economics, we don't necessarily say you're trying to maximize happiness. For example, you watching this video right now, it's not like it's making you happy. It's not making you just sit there and enjoy. But it's something that's important to you because it might help you get a job later on or so forth. So utility is basically just a catch-all term that means anything you care about. So if you're trying to increase your utility, you're trying to increase the things that you care about. So we believe that people generally tend to try to maximize their utility. So if you're rational, that means that you are utility maximizing. That's really all that means. So for example, for somebody who's like addicted to drugs, if they continue to use the drugs, that doesn't necessarily mean they're irrational, even though it might from the outside look like a poor choice, because maybe they just really like the drugs. So it might be rational to continue using it because they like it just that much. It's kind of the interesting thing about in economics is we don't make judgments on people. If somebody's doing something, we can't say they're necessarily doing what is irrational because we don't know what their values are. We don't know what they really care about. So rational basically means just to maximize your utility. So if you're making choices that maximize your utility, in economics we believe that it has to do with, it has to be done at the margins. Your thinking must be done at the margins. So this is kind of the next part of this one, it's kind of a tough idea. So to introduce it, I'll give you a couple of terms here. We'll start with marginal cost. Marginal cost is the additional cost of consuming one more unit of something. The additional cost of consuming one more unit. And when I say consuming, I don't necessarily mean that in the literal sense. Okay, when I say consuming, that might mean, a minute of sleep, or a minute of eating, or a minute of watching TV. So you're not literally consuming something necessarily. Belief here is basically that everything we do in life has a cost. It could be the opportunity cost, right? Whenever you do something, you can't be doing something else. So there's always some cost associated with every activity that we do. So the marginal cost is the additional cost if you do one more unit of something. So like one more second of me teaching this video. My marginal costs are everything else I'm giving up, okay? If I spend $1, what do I give up? That's the marginal cost. So the logic behind this is as you do more and more of something, you have changing marginal cost. And we believe that the marginal cost look like this. Here's our first graph for the class. So this is the quantity of something. It could be anything. Okay? Quantity of anything. And let's say this is the quantity of minutes watching TV. The quantity of minutes watching TV. Okay? And what this marginal idea is getting at is, think about it in terms of the very next increment of what you're doing, the very next second or very next minute of the activity that you're engaged in. All right, so this will be the quantity. As we go to the right, we'll move towards more minutes watching TV. As we go up here, this is the marginal cost. And we may think of this in units. Maybe this is utility, right? So this is like utility lost as you do more of this activity. So think about it here. Think about the cost, okay? If you watch 1 minute of TV, think about how costly that is to you. Probably not all that costly. Just watching 1 minute, you know, you can choose to watch that 1 minute at a time where you're not real busy. It's not really cutting into any important things in your life. Let's say you've watched TV for 20 hours. Watching 1 more minute now may be very costly. If you've already watched 20 hours of TV, that next minute is cutting into sleep, social time, eating, you know, important things of your life. Now imagine if you've watched 100 hours of TV. Watching 1 more minute, incredibly costly. So the interesting thing is, the more you do of any activity, the higher the marginal costs tend to be. And again, we're talking marginal, so we're saying for the next unit. Okay? So the first minute we watch, very low cost, and then over time those costs tend to rise. And this is what the relationship, we think, looks like. So, you know, if this is 20, maybe that 20th minute of watching TV has a relatively low cost here. All right, maybe I'm saying 4, right? The units kind of here don't make sense. You know, if I tell you the cost of watching a minute to me is 4 utils, 4 units of utility, it doesn't really make much sense, but we can think about a comparison of where these numbers are, okay? So 4 doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but what we can say is this is a low number, and if we've watched a lot of minutes, maybe 1,000 minutes, well, that 1,000th minute of watching TV would be much more costly, okay, maybe 40. Okay, so these numbers don't make a whole lot of sense by themselves, but what we can say is it's much more costly to watch that 1,000th minute. And the interesting thing is, everything in life is really like this. As you do more of it, the marginal costs tend to grow. So we'll get back to that, but now we need to show the other side of the decisions that we make. All right, there's cost to decisions that we make, and of course there are benefits. So now let's think about the benefits. All right, so another key term here, marginal benefit. This is the additional benefits of consuming 1 more unit. The additional benefit of consuming 1 more unit. All right, so let's think about the logic here. As you do more and more of an activity, what typically happens to the marginal benefits? So for example, of watching TV. There's always some benefit of watching TV, right? Even if you watched 1,000 hours of TV in a row, I don't know if that'd be possible, but if you did, even the next minute of TV would still be beneficial. There's still some benefit. It's just the costs are really high at that point, okay? So let's think about it. I want you to think about this as I'm going through the notes. I know you're not there in front of me, so I can't interact with you, but try to think about these things as I'm going through them. So let's say this is the quantity of minutes watching TV, again. And this is now the marginal benefits, right? We showed marginal cost last time. Now we're graphing the marginal benefits. Let's think about it. Think about the benefits of watching TV. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but we can ascertain that there are some similarities among people. So for example, if you've watched 1 minute of TV, think about the marginal benefits of the next minute. Versus, let's say you've watched 20 hours of TV, think about the next minute, the benefits of that next minute. If you think about this, what I think you'll realize is the marginal benefits tend to decrease. It's different for different people, okay? Maybe it's flat for a little while. Or maybe if you've watched TV for 10 minutes, maybe it gets a little bit better in that 11th minute because you know you're getting into the episodes or something. But eventually, this thing is going to start to decrease, all right? If you've watched TV for 10 hours, watching that next minute is just not that enjoyable, right? Because you're tired of watching TV. That's all you've been doing. It becomes less and less enjoyable over time. So the marginal benefits tend to decrease, okay? Meaning, those first few minutes of watching TV generally are a lot more enjoyable than the later minutes of watching TV. Okay? So that's marginal benefits. So now let's tie it all together. We're still on that concept of rational decisions are made at the margins, but I want to draw a nice big graph here so we can think about it. what we're going to do is we're going to put those concepts together. When you're making decisions, you weigh the benefits and the costs, right? So we are going to put these decisions together. So this is the quantity of minutes now, okay, of watching. Actually, let's change the example here. Let's say this is the quantity of bytes. This is an example I like to give in class. So if you're watching this and you're in class, I'm sorry if you're using the exact same concept again, but I think it makes a lot of sense to see it this way. So let's say this is the quantity of bites of pizza at a pizza buffet. You've already paid for the buffet, so you're inside and you're choosing pizza to eat. This is our quantity of bites, and this is our benefits and costs. Okay, B and C for benefits and costs. And so what we want to think about is, how do the benefits and costs look? Okay, so what are the benefits of eating pizza? You've already paid for it, so you're inside and you're deciding how many to eat. The benefits of eating the pizza are maybe the enjoyable taste that you're getting, maybe the nutrients, the feeling of getting, losing that hunger, feeling a little more full. These are perhaps beneficial features. But think about those benefits over time. In terms of the enjoyableness of eating the pizza, that's going to decline over time, isn't it? The first bite you take is delicious, right? But if you've taken 300 bites, that next bite is probably not tasting quite as good. You're getting bored of eating pizza. It just doesn't taste that good anymore. The feeling of the enjoyable nutrients you're getting, well, those nutrients, you've got plenty of them now. You don't really need it anymore, right? You've already consumed enough calories. So the marginal benefits tend to decrease, like that. Compare that with the marginal cost. The costs associated with eating pizza are probably, you start feeling full, to a point where it hurts. It's probably, going to make you gain weight if you eat too many bites. So think about the marginal cost. As you eat more bites, what happens to the marginal cost? Well, that first bite that you take really doesn't hurt you, right? One bite of pizza is not going to hurt you. 100 bites, that next bite now is going to hurt you. In terms of feeling full, maybe it's going to make you throw up, right? So as you eat more and more slices, those marginal costs tend to build. In other words, imagine you've taken 200 bites. Which bite had the most pain on you? That very last one, that 200th. Which one was the easiest? Which one had the lowest cost? The very first one you took. So marginal costs and marginal benefits tend to look like this. Okay? So now we can do some analysis here of this very simple graph. Think about what this person should do if this is what they're faced with. They've got benefits and they've got costs, right? So we can figure out what they should do. So let's imagine, for example, one of these bites is bite number 30, and it's right here. Should they take that bite? If they've taken 29 bites and they're trying to decide to take this 30th bite, should they? I think they should, right? Because the benefits are greater than the costs. That's how we can read this graph. For that 30th bite, here is our marginal benefit, right, for bite number 30. And here's our marginal cost for bite number 30. So clearly that 30th bite is worth it. So what you'd see is, as you move from left to right, the benefits are falling at a marginal level. The costs are rising marginally. Every bite is getting more and more costly. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose to bite every slice all the way up until the marginal benefits are equal to the marginal cost. Okay? So maybe this is 70. For this person, 70 bites would be ideal. Okay? Based on the marginal benefits and marginal costs, this would be ideal. If they take less than that, if they maybe only have 30 bites, they're not taking advantage of all those cases where the benefits are greater than the cost. If they have more than 70, well, now the costs are greater than the benefits over here, so that wouldn't be a good choice. So 70 would be ideal. So if rational decisions are made at the margin, what that would suggest is if this person is rational, they would consume this many. Of course, over time, things can change. What if you get to the pizza buffet and the bites are terrible? Well, then that would adjust the marginal cost and the marginal benefits. So you would change your mind. What if after 30 bites, suddenly you realize, I'm about to throw up. I don't feel good. I'm sick. Well, that would greatly change the costs and benefits. So rational decisions are made at the margins means you're adjusting and you're always thinking, should I take that very next bite? You might not be consciously thinking that, but subconsciously you are. You're in the pizza buffet, the fire drill goes off, well, that changes your cost, right? Now it's more costly to stay in there and keep eating pizza, so you leave. Rational decisions are made at the margins, mean you think for the very next increment. Okay, so that's the second one. The rest of these we can go through pretty quickly. All right, the third one is efficiency. We kind of moved from one topic to the next. Efficiency just means, it's really, efficiency is something we talk about a lot in economics, and it's one of those terms that could be defined in a lot of different ways. But maybe a simple way to define this is to maximize utility. Efficiency means to do the best you possibly can. Okay? It means to try to keep costs as low as possible and try to keep benefits as high as possible. So another way to define efficiency is to do all things where the marginal benefits are greater than the marginal cost, and don't do anything where the marginal costs are greater than the marginal benefit. That would be efficient. All right, so thinking about that graph one more time, let me give you a different one here. Let's say this is the quantity of beers consumed, and this is the benefits and costs. Let's say this is marginal costs and this is marginal benefits for this person. So think about it. What should this person do? We're thinking about how many beers this person should have. Well, this is, first of all, nothing is breaking the rules here. Marginal benefits are decreasing, which is typical. That means if this person does choose to drink a bunch of beers, every beer is a little less enjoyable than the one before. The first beer would be the tastiest, most enjoyable. Later than that, the benefits would be smaller. Marginal costs are rising. That makes sense, right? First beer costs are relatively low. 20 beers, that 20th beer is extremely costly, right? So what should this person do? We no longer have that situation where we have that crossing benefits and cost curve. But this person should consume 0 right here, right? Because the benefits are greater than the cost for every unit, they should not consume any at all. So for this person to be efficient, that's how many they should consume. So efficiency is basically saying just doing whatever you can to try to, maximize your utility. In this case, consuming no beers. So that's the third one. Okay, so again, this is going through the book. So if you have the book already, you can follow along here. The fourth one, and the rest of these are going to go through pretty quick. The fourth one is economics is about incentives. And I'm sure you know what an incentive is, but I'm going to define it just in case. This is basically just something that encourages or discourages you to do something or not do something. Economics, we spend a lot of time thinking about incentives because we know that people respond to incentives because incentives matter. So for example, let's say the government wants to get people to smoke fewer cigarettes. What kind of incentive could we provide? We could make it illegal, throw you in jail if you smoke cigarettes, or we could do as we do now. Right now, to try to discourage people from smoking cigarettes, we tax it, right? So cigarettes are taxed more heavily than other items, which discourages people from buying cigarettes. That's the logic, at least. If the government wants to encourage people to do something, it can change the incentives there. To go to Georgia College, it's a public institution. How do we encourage people to go to college? Well, we give them scholarships, right? The government provides scholarships, provides funding to the universities. So we like to think about incentives in terms of changing people's benefits and costs. So an incentive is just something that makes people change their decisions. Okay, so these are all kind of just a hodgepodge of information now. Getting through just these important concepts. Positive versus normative. Really just two terms here that are kind of opposing concepts. Positive basically should be spoken as factual. All right, so if I say outside right now it's under 90 degrees, that's positive. There's no way to argue against that. It's fact. Okay, so this is the way the way things are. This is the way the world is if you're speaking positively. Compare that to normatively. Normative speaking. And this is spoken as opinion or something that's not provable. Unprovable. I think that's a word, isn't it? Unprovable. So normative is when you're thinking of things the way the world ought to be. Right? So a lot of times this is defined as the way the world is, positive. Normative is the way you think the world ought to be. So if I say we should raise taxes on fatty foods, that would be normative analysis. Or if I said, if we cut taxes, that's going to lead to a stronger economy, that's really normative economics because it can't be proven. Okay? So positive is fact-based, normative is opinion-based. The only time this gets confusing is when people say things in a positive way that are normative statements. All right? So if I say right now, taxes are too high. Taxes are purely too high. That sounds positive, right? Because I'm telling you the way things are, but it's really normative in terms of the content. There's no way to prove that taxes are too high because what are the criteria to evaluate that statement? So that's the only time this gets tricky. When that gets tricky, I just like to not even think about it, right? I would no longer term that as positive or normative. It's something else entirely. And then number 6 here is microeconomics versus macroeconomics. I'm just going to speak on this very briefly because I brought it up in the first video. If you're taking this in the summer class, that first video I sent out, I talked about this a bit. Micro is at the individual level. Okay, so microeconomics is thinking about what individuals do, firms, industries, things like that. Macroeconomics is the entire economy. All right, micro versus macroeconomics, these are very different concepts. It frustrates me when students tell me, I really enjoyed your microeconomics class, and I have to tell them, no, it was macroeconomics because they're such different subjects. Macroeconomics, again, is looking at the entire economy, which means we're going to talk about inflation, trade, things like that. Microeconomics focuses on individuals, businesses, smaller entities. All right, so then I've just got a couple more ideas that are in the book that I want to talk about real quick. The factors of production. Factors of production are the things you need to produce something. Okay? So for example, let's say that I am going to start, let's say I'm going to start a brewery. Okay? So let's say I'm going to start a brewery. Let's think about the things that I would need to have a brewery. One thing I need is a building, right? I need a place to actually have my brewery. Things like a building fall into the realm of capital. All right? Capital in economics means something very specific. And again, it's kind of confusing because that word capital, a lot of times when people say capital, they're talking about money. I need to raise some capital for my business. That's not really what we think of in economics. Capital are the things that can be used to produce other things. So these are produced goods used to produce other goods or services. Okay, and a good being something tangible, something that you can actually usually hold, and a service being something that you can't hold. For example, medical care is a service versus this whiteboard is a good, okay? So capital is produce goods used to produce other goods or services. Everything you can see around me here, which I know isn't very much, but it's all capital, right? The building I'm in is capital because it's not, the final user isn't using it. It's not a consumer that purchased this building to use. It's a business that's using it to turn it into something else, okay? So this building is not like a final product. It's an intermediate product. Likewise, this board, right? This board is capital because it's being used to produce a service, education, okay? So capital is a produced good used to produce something else. Well, if I'm starting my brewery, capital, things like the building, air conditioners, anything involved with the brewing process, in terms of like machinery, that sort of thing, that would all be capital. Other things I need, well, I need water, I need some electricity, I need, hops and barley, the things I need to brew the beer. These are all natural resources, we call it. Natural resources are goods used, let's just kind of vaguely say items used to produce other goods. That are provided by Earth. Okay? I'm not real thrilled with that definition, but that's a decent way to think about it, I think. The difference here between capital and natural resources is capital is produced for somebody to use. All right, so this whiteboard was produced for me to use. Natural resources instead typically aren't really produced. Okay? They're available and we just need to use them. All right? So for example, gold. Gold isn't capital, it's not produced. Rather, we just find it and then use it, okay? Electricity is a natural resource. So here in Milledgeville, we get most of our electricity, as I understand, from the dam, hydroelectric power, okay? So that electricity is there, right? The water is moving, and all we have to do really is just exploit it, okay? So that's a natural resource. So in my brewery, that's the water, the electricity, the hops, the barley, and anything else that comes from the earth. Other things I need labor. You all know what labor is. I got to hire some labor. I'm going to define that. And then the last one here is entrepreneurship. Hard one to spell. Entrepreneurship. And this is basically the unique skills that some people have, and you use those skills to organize one, two, and three for production. All right? So it's the unique skills some people have to take these other factors of production, these other inputs, organize them in a fashion to produce a good or service. So if I'm starting my brewery, I go out there and I find my building, I find some machinery, I find a way to pay for electricity and water, that sort of thing. I hire some labor, and that's me providing the entrepreneurship. It's me that's organizing all of this stuff together. All right, so that's the factors of production. The reason this is going to be real important later on is we're going to talk about different countries and their relative abilities in each of these factors. So for example, when we think about comparing countries, comparing, let's say, the United States to Mexico, which is, I think, a good example because pretty different levels of production right next door. So there's a lot of similarities between those two countries, but then also a lot of differences. We might ask, why is the U.S. so much more wealthy than Mexico? I think our average production is about 5 times higher in the U.S. than it is in Mexico. Well, part of it comes down to maybe some of these, maybe all of them. Capital. We do have better capital in the United States. So for example, if I was going to start a brewery here in Milledgeville, it'd be easy because the buildings already exist. All I got to do is go and start paying rent. So the fact that that capital is already there makes it so much easier, okay? If you've ever been in a classroom where the computer broke, or you're sitting in an uncomfortable chair, simple things like that are examples of capital that's not really all that well developed. Things, as a result, are not as productive. So capital is really important, and one good thing about capital is it accumulates over time. So if I build a house today, it's probably still going to be here 100 years from now. So future generations get to benefit from the efforts of prior generations. And that's a big reason why we get wealthier over time, is simply we're just getting more and more capital over time. Natural resources. Some countries have better natural resources than others. This one actually doesn't matter as much as you might think. A lot of the countries that have great natural resources aren't all that wealthy. A lot of countries that have very poor natural resources are extremely wealthy. So this one maybe doesn't matter as much as you might think, but it does still matter. Third one is labor. And how can we make labor more productive, right? If we want to make capital more productive, we produce more capital, produce better capital. How do we make labor more productive? Probably through education, through having better schools, better universities, and also having people go to schools and universities more frequently. So development of labor is obviously very important to an economy's well-being. And then the last one here, entrepreneurship. The best way to improve entrepreneurship is probably to have governmental rules and laws that make it easy for people to start businesses. So what's interesting about these four is, at a macro level, thinking about macroeconomics, we can look at a country and say, well, why is this country struggling? Why are people poor there? Poverty is a big deal. There are countries that are very poor, and we can make these people a lot happier if we could bring them out of poverty. So a good place to look is at these four and say, are there problems in these four? Is there a way to fix them? I think that's often the easiest and simplest ways to try to improve people's well-being. To wrap things up, one last term. Okay, and I just want to make sure this got put in here in the first video. So, ceteris paribus. Just one last idea to introduce here. Ceteris paribus is Latin, and it means essentially all else held equal. Or in other words, if nothing else changes. All right? So holding everything else the same, if nothing else changes, that's what ceteris paribus means. So let me give you an example of the way this works. If I say the price of ice cream goes up, people will buy less ice cream. That's true as long as nothing else changes. Okay? So the way I would phrase this is, if price of ice cream goes up, people buy less ice cream, ceteris paribus. Just meaning as long as nothing else changes. Okay? All right, another example. If wages in Milledgeville go up, population in Milledgeville will rise, ceteris paribus, as long as nothing else is changing. So if we can imagine that we isolate everything else, keep everything else exactly the same, and wages just go up in Milledgeville, people are going to move here, as long as none of that other stuff changes. We kind of say this a lot in economics because we don't have the ability to do like they do, say, in chemistry, right? In chemistry, you can combine two elements and see what happens, and it's easy to keep everything else the same. Economics is very difficult, right? If wages in Milledgeville are going up, chances are wages are doing something somewhere else. There's probably a lot of other things that really matter that would determine whether or not people move here. So ceteris paribus is basically to try to imagine that we have a test tube to look at here, and just imagine what happens when wages go up. So anytime I say ceteris paribus in this class, which will be a lot, that's what I'm referring to, as long as nothing else changes. Okay, that's the end of chapter 1. If you're taking my summer class, I will post the quiz here in just a bit. I'll post this video, I'm sending an email, and this is the way things are going to go. I'm going to record videos, I'm going to post the quizzes, and I'm also going to give you guys worksheets to work on. Things are going to be tough. There's a lot of material we've got to cover. We've only got about a month to do so. If this class was taught in person, we'd be meeting for almost 3 hours a day. So we've got to keep that same level of content going in order to get through this class. So that's why things are going to be moving very quickly. You got to spend a couple hours outside of class working on this every day to be competent and be ready for the exam, because we have an exam just 1 week from today. Right? A week from today we'll have our first exam, and we'll be a third of the way done with this class. So you've got to stay on top of things. All right, let me know if you have any concerns. Send me an email.